Right now, I'm gonna show you how I'm using this small watercolor palette and testing it against my regular watercolor palette. It's raining and I'm based in my car right now, but there's a cool landscape outside, and I'm gonna do a little bit of landscape painting in my miniature journal and test it against my regular size journal. Okay, so here is the first setup. This is not my default kit. This is one I'm experimenting with. It's a handbook, sketchbook co. or handbook co. Sketchbook right here. I like this format. It's got a little thing like that, so I can use it as a hairband if necessary, and also potentially hold my stuff. But here you can see this is a pretty small kit. You could fit this all in your mouth or in your breast pocket, for example. Might be a little bit big for a pocket, but could definitely fit in a pocket on your clothes or in like a fanny pack or something like that. Part of the reason why a small sketchbook or a small kit is supposed to be good, right, is that you can use it in more extreme situations, or when you're stuck in a cramped car, for example, or you need more portability, right? Those are some of the supposed benefits of a smaller sketchbook, a smaller kit. Also, another potential benefit could be that they're easier to carry. So ideally, this setup should be easier to carry and easy to use in portable situations where you don't have that much space, or maybe it's more extreme sketching situation. Those are what we're hoping to benefit from a smaller kit. So let's see if we actually get that. This week's episode is on YouTube, and next week's episode is on my Patreon. Let me see if I can. So I am able to balance it somewhat on this box right here. It's definitely a little bit hard to hold up in my hand. Okay, so I didn't do a great drawing, but it's something of this landscape. It's raining pretty hard out there, so this is a good example of when you might want a smaller kit, is to be in the confined places of a car, or maybe you have a small kit that you can just keep in your car all the time. Those are some benefits of a small kit. All right, I got the basic drawing in with this Tombow pen, dual-sided brush pen. It's all right. I like it. And now people's favorite part is I'm going to use this micro watercolor kit. This one actually straps onto your finger, and this is something from Christina Wald, I believe, sent it to me, and it's like 3D printed or something. Very cool. I have experimented with it some, and I have some YouTube shorts experimenting with it. I have mixed feelings about the practicality of it. Here you can see it's got this Velcro strap, and whether it's actually more practical in the field or for more portability than a larger watercolor palette such as this. So one thing right off the bat to notice is that if I'm holding my sketchbook like this, holding my water brush like this, ready to paint, and then I have this on my finger, my finger has to go over some part of the page unless I'm like holding it back here like this. So it's a little bit awkward holding this sketchbook and the watercolor at the same time. And while I'm doing that, I'm also noticing it's hard to open up the watercolor with one hand. So one hand ability is like I should be able to complete these operations at the same time. And if I get my fingernail in the right place, I am able to open the watercolor palette with one hand. A little bit tricky, but it's still functional. Now, the other thing that I need, I should have thought of this before, for this kit is actually a little bit of paper towel. And I hold that under the sketchbook so I can clean the brush. And in this case, the palette's quite dirty, so I should clean that to... Well, actually, that's really close to the color that I need. So I'm going to use that mess right there and put in this whole situation here. It might be good with this really small palette to use a water brush that has a slower flow. I'm wishing I had buff titanium right now, so that's definitely a downside of the limited palette. Ooh, that actually looks quite a bit like buff titanium though. La 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 la. If you want to hear better music on the Nature Journal show, support me on Patreon. I wish I had a little bit of Windsor violet or purple color. Let's see, this blue got pretty dirty, but I think there's blue in there somewhere. It's all coming out brown. This is why it's important to keep your colors clean, and I think it's harder to do that with a small palette. Oh, maybe I don't have blue in here. Well, that's one thing you need to do right if you have a limited palette, is make sure you have all the colors you need. I think this was blue, but now it's all muddied, so let's fade it down and see if we can still do what we need to do. It's actually still kind of a warm color. There we go, that'll work. So I'm just focusing on values here mostly. I wanted blue for the sky, but also for that distant hill, because blue makes things look far away. But since I don't have the right hue, I can at least try to get the right value. Sometimes, you know, it can be really edifying to work with a limited palette, and I think that's why some people recommend it more than just that it's a micro thing. So the fact that it fits in an Altoid can, that looks cool on social media, but if it doesn't actually like make sense in some way, I don't think there's any reason to use a Altoid can for your watercolor palette. So just tested this small ring one, had, you know, I think that worked out fine. I'm sitting in a cramped position in a car, so it worked all right in the cramped quarters. I know I have a lot of like complaints about it, and I think it might not always be as manageable as a larger kit, but I'm trying to be at least a little bit objective as I test these supplies. So you might notice when you're testing supplies too, that you have one that you're already unfairly favoring. So try to be aware of that when you're testing out supplies. I do still feel like these smaller ones aren't necessarily more practical, but I'm gonna try to keep testing it objectively. You saw me get this landscape in with the small kit and the small sketchbook. Now I'm gonna go to my regular kit. So right off the bat, this is all contained in one bag. So if I need my binoculars, for example, in the middle of this watercolor landscape, they're right here. I've got this almost the same drawing tools, basically the same watercolor brush, and an equivalent Japanese brush pen. In this case, these are my favorite Pilot ones. And instead of that small sketchbook from, I think this is the Handbook Sketchbook Company Handbook, instead of this small pocket one, I'm going to be using my Stillman and Burn, and this is 9 by 12 that I normally use. And the watercolor palette that I'm going to use is, in this case, it is a field palette. It's a lot larger. It's probably 10 times bigger than the thing that I was just using, which is now in a little plastic bag, over 10x that size. And I will be using that one. And this is probably almost four times as big as the sketchbook that I was using before. So let's do that same size, similar drawing and see how it goes with this setup. So right off the bat, I'm noticing that this palette also goes on my thumb. Look at that. It's also right there on my thumb. And I can do things with my other fingers while still holding it. So I can manipulate this whole setup here, this whole sketchbook, and even the pages individually. And I can grab the whole sketchbook like this and hold it to me, so I don't actually need to support it in the same way with my hand. I can also, looks like, put it here on the edge of this box, which is very convenient, and it actually feels more stable. How much is my left hand coming over on the paper? How much is the palette? It does look like the palette is covering up some of the paper, so that means not your whole drawing space will be accessible. But if I hold it this way, I can reach under here pretty easily. So that does seem like a lot of the surface area is reachable even with the palette fully open. A massive palette in comparison to the other one, and 32 pre-existing colors without even mixing them. So less color mixing required. That's pretty practical, I would say. But first, before I even do this, I'm going to put the palette away. That was just to show you, and I'm going to get the drawing part in. So let's go ahead and grab that pilot pin right here. And I'll try to do almost the exact same kind of landscape study here. I'm leaning on the box, which is quite comfortable. So I can still do a small thing in here, but I could also do a much larger one if I wanted to. And I wouldn't have been able to do that on a single page in the last one. So you can run out of space in a smaller one. Easy to hold it actually with one hand, or to hold it like this in a variety of ways. It flips back completely, so I don't have that weird floppy side like with the other one. Gray pen is on. So I'm kind of adding more to the drawing on this one than I did to the last one, but I should probably try to do that with the watercolor. One of the benefits of really beefing up your watercolor capabilities in your kit is that you can use watercolor for more things. Watercolor can be very fast. So like what I'm doing right now with a gray pen can be good for learning, and it can have a unique aesthetic, but it also is slower than filling in these blocks of value with watercolor. With watercolor, you can really fill in blocks of value very quickly and very easily. But you can see there, perfectly able to hold this and draw pretty easily with this larger setup. And I actually was able to make a whole bigger one here. And I'm going to go ahead and put in another drawing over here and show how I can use a slightly different system. And I'm probably going to try to use my values with the watercolor and get into that big watercolor palette now. The looseness with which I'm going now, it is achievable in a small sketchbook, so shouldn't say it isn't. But sometimes a bigger sketchbook, it cramps you what you're capable of less. Also, if you think about it from a computer perspective, the bigger sketchbook has way more storage space. Every page here, everything I have in here, this is all storage space and maybe working memory as well. So if you have the option of having a computer with more storage space and more working storage, nobody questions the benefits of that. Everybody automatically wants a phone or a computer with basically as much storage space as possible, as long as the price isn't like way crazier. So everyone takes for granted that more storage space in a computer is a good thing. So in some ways, think about your nature journal or your sketchbook in that way. Why not have more space if you can use it? So I'm just trying to sort of deconstruct some reasons why a micro kit would be good, and compare them a little bit. And while I'm saying all that, I'm still trying to work on this landscape here, landscape sketch in black ink. And now I'm going to add color to that. So what you'll see is I can easily put this pin back in a really obvious place. I always know where it goes because there's organizational, the small kit setup that I have, it's kind of maybe a rubber band or a little pouch could turn it into an organizational unit, but right now it's sort of just a loose assortment of pieces. So I'm going to put the paper towel in here under my palette. With one hand I can take the lid off and put the lid back on of the water brush, so that's very important. And now I'm going to go straight into painting this smaller one. And since I have so many more colors, I have a lot more options and a lot more mixing area. I can make bigger washes. And I have this lovely gray that I can use here right off the bat. And that should actually be lighter than I started off making the sky and the water too dark, so that's always a no-no basically. Trying to work fast, so I'm doing a little bit of wet on wet or using these sort of edges, white edges. Okay, I'm gonna multitask and start on the other painting. A lot of times it's helpful for watercolor if you have multiple paintings going at the same time, because of drying time, because of what it means to change color on your brush every time you need to do a different color. Because of all of those things, it's helpful if you have multiple paintings going at the same time. You might as well do more at the same time. So was this watercolor palette or this watercolor palette better for doing a landscape ito cramped in a car on a rainy day? Well, the verdict is still out. I think I need to do more tests with miniature kits and smaller kits such as this before I can say whether they're actually better or more useful in tight and confusing situations such as this than a regular sized or large nature journal kit like the one that I carry in my Patagonia bag. Learn more about supplies, see extra videos, and get a whole bunch of other resources on my Patreon at patreon.com/MarleyPiper. Bye.